Being a young man on the internet was a wild experience for me. One second I was watching Call of Duty montages and comedy skits, and the next second I was watching a grown adult man at a university debating a university student on gender politics. My descent into the far right rabbit hole all started because I googled one seemingly innocent question. My name is Mikey, and this is how I fell down the far right rabbit hole and how I got myself back out of it. The year was 2020 and I was alone. Not fully, I still lived at my mum's house, but I spent a lot of my time isolated up in my bedroom by myself. To add to it, we were in COVID, so isolation was absolutely inescapable, but it's not too dissimilar to how young men feel in 2025. Isolation still feels inescapable because of the way the world and all of our communication has moved online. So because of that, I spent a lot of my early 20s doom scrolling. And because I was a young man, I was also doom scrolling the dating apps. I was spending many a late night just swiping and swiping and swiping, hoping to find love. I wanted to give love and I wanted to feel love. And I thought I'd find salvation through a dating app. I thought I'd cure my loneliness through the love of a woman. But I had little to no luck. And I started thinking, maybe there's a problem with my dating profile. And then I got to thinking, maybe there's a problem with me. So naturally, I looked up tips on Reddit on how to improve my profile, and I added those tips and I put it back out there, and still no luck. But I'm a tenacious fella and I didn't give up so easily, so I typed into YouTube a seemingly innocent question: how to get girls to respond. Immediately, I was bombarded with all types of videos and thousands of different titles and thumbnails, all vying for my attention. They were all trying to help me. Now, being young and impatient, I clicked on the title that was the loudest and grabbiest. It sounded something to the tune of 100% foolproof way to get girls to respond to your DMs. That video was the start of my descent into the alt-right pipeline, and I didn't even know it. These videos very quickly turned my introspective thoughts of, hey, maybe I've got a bit of a problem here, to all women are the problem, they're the devil. And they all had strategies on how I could play the women's mind games and then win. These gurus knew what all women wanted. Their source? Trust me, bro. To be fair, sometimes I did come across a woman who shared the exact same ideals, which only made the whole perspective feel so much more credible because she's a woman and she can speak for her entire gender, right? And unfortunately, there are so many things that young men can search up that will cause them to fall down the exact same rabbit hole. How to get people to like me, how to be confident, how to get a girlfriend. They all lead to the same place. A pit of alpha bros trying to sell you a brand new personality that fits into their definition of masculinity. And I didn't fit into it, but that's okay because they had a course that would teach me how. These gurus, coaches, they were all so confident and compelling, and they were incredible at using my fears to sell me on their ideology. Now, to many, this sounds like a cult, and that's because it is, but to younger me, I finally felt like I'd found community. All these people looking up the same thing had the same problems, and these guys all had the answers. I felt safe and like I was finally understood. But they call it a pipeline for a reason, because it went so quickly from videos on how to get a date to why trans rights will ruin the Western world. The connection between all the videos was a fear of the what if. What if you did stay alone forever and never got a date? What if you are a big stupid loser and need a course? What if Sharia law was introduced to the Western world? And for all these what ifs that I didn't even Google, I wasn't on the internet for any of these guys still had solutions for those things too. So I still felt safe, albeit very scared. But now looking back on it, it wasn't genuine safety. It was more safety in numbers because I was surrounded by a bunch of other people who felt the same things. They were all made to feel fearful, angry, and scared by these minority groups that they've probably never even come into contact with. And somehow they were really good at linking the fact that these minority groups would affect the way that I would have to be a man in this modern world. Well, at least the definition of man that they tell you is right. And once you're in this state of panic and fear, you're so susceptible to believing these wild takes. Your critical thinking also starts to fade because they seem to be doing all the thinking for you. They're masters at luring people in, and once you're in, you stay in because it's coupled with the algorithms that are designed by these evil Silicon Valley tech bros that want to keep keep you on the app. So they'll start recommending you videos with even more intense titles and more intense thumbnails, and no one's telling you to take a break. And suddenly you wake up 6 months later, immersed completely within this world of ideologies and beliefs, wondering, how did I get here? And within that 6 months, my views radically shifted. I feared people, minorities, I had never come into contact with in my entire life. And I had already formulated all of these counter debates to their arguments, just like my idols online had done. I was angry and all consumed in an absolute shell of the man I once knew myself to be, which was kind and fun and compassionate. Luckily, on the side of my internet pursuits, I was doing some light reading. My mum is a gem and she bought me some personal development books, some autobiographies to keep me ticking the days over. And in one of those books, I found something that truly saved me. I was reading Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights, which is an autobiography written by Matthew McConaughey that is a culmination of all of his journals throughout his entire life, and he reflects back upon them. I was inspired by the notion of journaling every day, so I thought I might give that a try myself. Maybe one day I'll want to read back through these journals. And so I started daily journaling around about the same time that I started falling down the pipeline. And 6 months later, I was in a pretty grim place mentally. I was sick of feeling lonely, sad, and angry, and for some reason, I thought, just like Matthew McConaughey, maybe I'll find some solution by reading my past journals. And lo and behold, there it was. Or rather, there I was, because in those journals, reflected back at me, was a really ugly version of myself. He was angry, sad, desperate, obsessive. He held some crazy social and political views. And he viewed women in such a negative light, in such a distorted light. A light that, well, I would despise other men for thinking that way. I did not like the guy staring back at me. I did not want to be him. Which was a good thing, because after finding out who I didn't want to be, I could now spend a bunch of time finding out who I did want to be. How I got out. That moment of self-reflection at the 6-month mark was game-changing for me, and it forced me to look inwards and ask myself the question, who do I want to be? And how do I want people to perceive me behind my back when I'm not looking? Through introspection, I found my biggest issue at the time, which was my obsession in finding a woman who would cure my loneliness. My loneliness wasn't going to be fixed by a woman. A lesson that I learned that shocked me to my core was that you can be truly lonely while sleeping in a bed with someone else next to you. You will never feel more lonely than that, I can assure you. All that to say, the solution is not a woman. My loneliness was my own to fix, and so I got to work on it. I started by getting my phone out of the bedroom at night. Doom scrolling till 3 AM was doing nothing good for my soul. The phone out of the bedroom did mean that I had a lot of time to fill at night, and so I needed things to do. So I formed a routine which took me months to solidify, but once I had it down pat, it was magical. It looked like this. By about 9:30, sometimes 10, I'd be in my bedroom, phone locked outside the bedroom. I'd have a speaker with me that would be playing calming music that was being Bluetooth from my phone that will remain outside the bedroom. That is really important. I would start by getting on the floor and stretching for around 15 minutes. That seems like a long time, but you really need to let your body start to wind down. And in that time, your brain is gonna start whirring, which is why after the stretching, I start journaling. And I would journal for as long as I could. I would journal about anything. Nothing was off limits. I would do this journaling practice until I felt like my thoughts were finally actually slowing down. I also did this with pen and paper because the less screen time at night meant that there was less chances of me starting to doom scroll on a device. And then I'd meditate because I wanted to be less scared of my mind when it was just me and it left alone together. I heard meditation was the thing to do for this. So I'd meditate for around 10 to 20 minutes, and if I wasn't asleep by the end of that, I would start to read. Now, high school for me ruined reading, and I thought I wasn't a natural reader until I got out of school and realized I can read whatever I want. Reading's dope. And I'd read a bunch of genres: fiction, autobiographies, self-help books. I think it's good to have a balance though. Circulate through. As young men, we're often marketed to have a lot of personal development reading in our lives, and that's a good thing, but I think too much of it can be a bad thing, so switch it up with some fiction occasionally. And if I wasn't tired by all of that, I'd put on a sitcom so I could fall asleep. But the ultimate goal is just to not be on the phone, because I found when I got on the phone at night, I became the ugly guy that I saw in my journals, and I did not want to be him. I'll be honest, as soon as I started doing this, I saw results, because the less time I spent at night consuming this content, the less I started to resonate with it, and the happier I started to feel, the lighter I started to feel. And I found that I was way more comfortable being alone with my thoughts. The same thoughts and fears would still pop up, like, what if you never find someone and you're forever alone? But instead of immediately going online to vet these thoughts, I would just get introspective and ask myself that question. And I knew I'd be okay with it, because I'd become okay with dealing with my own thoughts. The scary ones that pop up, the good ones that pop up. And if I couldn't find the answer within myself, I would more likely now go to friends and family instead of going online, because I knew what was waiting for me online. Within a couple of weeks, that alt-right content started looking real ugly. It went from men debating students to grown adults going to a university and debating really heavy issues against 18-year-olds, and doing so with smug confidence with these pre-rehearsed lines. It suddenly wasn't cool to me that they were dunking on these hyper-emotional 18-year-olds. It seemed really cruel. And they made their money by making people feel so angry and scared. And the more time I spent in the real world made me realize that the real world isn't as scary as they're saying it is, and I also didn't have as many enemies as they said I did. I didn't have any enemies actually, because my life isn't a movie. I got out of the pit fast, but the climb back to normality has taken longer than I ever thought. I'm now 27. It's been a good 5-6 years since. And I still catch myself thinking the rhetoric that was spouted online, these opinions that I never really made my own. They were theirs, but they still rattle around in my head. And I find myself unwriting these opinions still to this day. But in good news, my life is abundantly better. I am happier, I am lighter, I have a better relationship with social media. I have a real relationship. I am engaged to a beautiful woman. I am so happy. And I truly believe none of this would have been achievable if I had have stayed down that pipeline. The happiness they're trying to sell you, well, that's just it. They're not selling you happiness. They're selling you a course to make them money. But just like the dating apps that I use, those dating apps don't want you to succeed, because then they can't take more money from you. I don't really have a solution for all of that. But what I can offer is to find a bit more balance with being online. The internet is a really cool and powerful tool that has really great information and really bad information on it. And we should not be spending so many hours downloading all of that information directly into our noggins. No one needs that much information about everything. We need to be spending way more time with real people than we do with influencers on the internet. This is just my story though. If you have any questions for me, please leave them below. Otherwise, you can privately DM me. I'd be happy to try and assist in any way I can. I really do hope this helps.